Yeah, I've been meant to be filled up. Try again.
Hello. How are we doing today? It's a beautiful day in Flint, Michigan. So we're happy that you could join us today. So welcome everyone to today's session, both in person and online. I'm Chris Giordano, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. And today I'm joined by Dr. Lisa Sankrant, Senior Director of Student Health and Wellness, to discuss transformation initiatives centered on health and wellness. So what we will cover today, we're just going to frame today's conversation a bit. We're going to review the process that got us to this point, talk about the resulting initiatives that came out of that process. Then we'll talk very specifically about the Student Health and Wellness initiative. And then at the end, we will take some questions and comments. So for today's conversation, this is number 5 of 5 listening sessions that we've designed to provide the campus with an update about the support services under consideration as part of the transformation. It's also an opportunity to share additional information at this point in the process and to hear from some additional folks. Today we'll focus on support services, and if we do have some additional questions about the academic portion of the transformation, we can certainly take those and then we can respond in other ways. From the beginning, this has been an iterative process, so that's important to understand. So we've been at this now for over a year, and as we continue to progress through the process, we adapt. Sometimes we change and adjust. So understand that what we're going to present today is what we know at this time, at this point of the process. Keep in mind that this is still at the proposal stage. So we don't know what may or may not be supported through Ann Arbor. We're trying to make the most compelling argument we can for support for what we feel is needed to transform this institution and provide the best possible experience for our students and our community. So we will see once we hear back from the regents how we will move forward. And currently we're involved in 3 major initiatives: the transformation, campus master planning, and the capital campaign. I know that my staff just met with the Vice Chancellor for Advancement, Sherry Schrader, earlier this week, and we're starting to talk about what some major project areas will be out of my division. And similarly, these conversations are happening across campus. And at some point, these 3 things will come together and there will form a mesh point where they will complement each other in moving this institution forward. So For part two of the process, this is essentially what we were focused on. We were focused on enhancing student success, promoting student life, improving operations, upgrading infrastructure. This is really what we were looking to do. Some of these things needed some upgrades. Some of these areas really need wholesale changes, and some of these areas just represent a gap in service, and we need to determine, how do we meet that need? The process and this flow chart demonstrates how this worked. So at the top of the chart, there is a button that says metadata, and this was all the information that was either captured or generated during part one of the transformation process. Metadata consists of the market demand analysis, course economics review, community engagement and stakeholder feedback, and the holistic synthesis of findings that was produced in the form of a synthesis report. Stakeholder feedback included information received through surveys, focus groups, interviews, emails, the strategic transformation website feedback form, the chancellor's open office hours, or by appointment. So in all, there were over 2,000 pieces of feedback that were collected and compiled into a data sheet that was used to inform how we determined we would move forward with this process. You can see in the orange boxes the work groups that were formed to help move this process forward and come up with some recommendations for improvements. These working groups were the academic deans, ITAC, staff, a staff working group, and student government. So using the metadata that I described as a starting point, each of these groups were charged with submitting recommendations for consideration in the form of proposals. Each group submitted up to 10 proposals, each based on project proposal guidelines. So each received some very specific guidelines on how they were to submit their recommendations. Proposals were submitted to project leadership for review and evaluation based on established guidelines and evaluation criteria. While project prioritization criteria were established in review of each proposal, evaluation of proposals was viewed through an RRG lens, with recruitment, retention, and graduation acting as a key filter, which, if you've been awake for the past year or two, should be no surprise at all. The strongest proposals were evidence-based and supported through data, research literature, national standards, and best and high-impact practices. And in all, proposals were then prioritized and incorporated into these 10 project areas. The 6 on the left represent the project areas that we discussed during these information sessions. The project areas on the right are either being pursued in other ways that will not be represented through these info sessions or are still under consideration. So today we will talk about the Student Health and Wellness Initiative, as you can see, and that will round out our 5 info sessions. So this is a visual graphic that we wanted to provide to folks to give them a sense of how these 6 project areas, these 6 support areas, really work together to complement and build on one another. So they're represented and plotted sequentially through this modified Gantt chart. We wanted to provide this representation of the primary periods of intervention and impact for each initiative and demonstrate how they align along this progressive pathway throughout the student life cycle. While each of these impact students differently throughout the student life cycle, we feel that the highlighted areas represent the periods of highest impact. So we understand that this is not a linear experience for most of our students, many of our students, but also that these are foundational supports that students need depending on when they enter into this experience throughout their experience, both from pre-enrollment through their experience here at the university and then on through to graduation. It does demonstrate the following things. You know, like I mentioned, it's extending from pre-enrollment through graduation, regardless of major or program, are complementary in nature throughout the life cycle, designed to serve all students, taking into consideration subpopulations, cohorts, and course modality. And these are things that we have discussed in a little more granular way in these different information sessions throughout this process. It prioritizes health and wellness as a foundation for student success and well-being, and we'll talk more about that today, understanding that this is a foundational undergirding of support that all students need, regardless of where they enter into the experience along the life cycle. And while the example that we provide is based on an undergraduate student pathway, there are elements here that will impact and apply to online students, graduate students, professional program students, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. So with that, I thank you, and I will turn the mic over to Lisa, and she will continue with the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as Dr. Giordano mentioned, student health and wellness kind of flows throughout all of the elements we've been talking about. It's woven throughout the feedback we got with the data we were collecting for the transformation, as well as the proposals that we've heard thus far to this point. So this information's all been incorporated into a comprehensive strategy to address student health and well-being here at UM-Flint. So we're going to take a look at what we currently know. Let me get to the right slide about our students so far based on health and well-being data we've been collecting. And then we're going to talk about some foundational strategies to move us forward to being a health promoting campus. Let me just move that before I drop it. So some of you have probably seen this before, but we have data gathered from the National College Health Assessment and the Healthy Minds Survey. We completed the National College Health Assessment in the winter of 2022, and the Healthy Minds Survey was completed earlier this year in this March or winter of 23 semester. The National College Health Assessment is offered by the American College Health Association. So we are able to compare our data with students at the national level, and same with the Healthy Minds Survey. That does come out of the Healthy Minds Network out of Ann Arbor. So here I was able to pull together some comparative data from the two different surveys. We look at 5 different diagnoses that are the most common among our student population. And how many students have reported experiencing that diagnosis in their lifetime. So depression, anxiety is the highest, neurodevelopmental disorders, which include ADHD, autism spectrum disorders, trauma and stress, and eating disorders. So those students, here's the percentages of students reporting those issues at some point in their life. And then the self-injurious behavior and suicide attempt was behaviors that were present within the past 12 months. So if we look at self-injurious behavior, it was higher on the Healthy Mind Survey, and we're still having students attempt suicide, and we see a little bit of an increase with the Healthy Mind Survey. Both surveys, we had enough students respond to be statistically significant. Here's some additional information pulled from both surveys. The top squares are related to the National College Health Assessment. So 52% of our students reported that health and well-being is a priority here at UM-Flint, and 57 report that the campus climate encourages free and open discussion about health and well-being. And 71% report experiencing moderate or high psychological distress. The Healthy Mind Survey also let us know that 36% of our students report having a positive psychological well-being. 38% have at least one mental health problem and are not currently in treatment for that issue. And 50% of our students still perceive that there's stigma around seeking treatment for mental health issues. So additional things to consider, just about what we know with our student data, through the National College Health Assessment, these were the highest factors that students noted impacted their health and well-being. Sense of belonging, and that was particularly high for, or I should say lower sense of belonging for our transgender and non-binary students. Our students are dealing with food insecurity, low physical activity compared to other college students throughout the nation, financial stress, and that worsened throughout the pandemic, and sleep and nutrition issues, which are pretty consistent with the national levels, but still things to be addressed when we're looking at overall health and well-being for students. Our support services under the Student Health and Wellness umbrella right now include counseling and psychological services, or DAPS, or CAPS, disability and accessibility support services, and recreational services, which we have good representation from here today. So when we look at CAPS, we've seen just every semester an increased number of students and the number of appointments within the center. Right now, we're at a 2 to 2.5 week wait time for an initial appointment. The students who are participating in the services indicate on the survey that we give every semester, but also through the Healthy Mind survey, a high satisfaction rate. They're more likely to complete because of their services with CAPS, and they've been satisfied with the treatment that they have had. And what's concerning here is we saw from the Healthy Mind survey that we have 38% of students who are indicating a mental health problem who are not getting help. So we're already 2 weeks out. We know that mental health is correlated with higher satisfaction in college and a higher likelihood of graduating. The more positive your mental health is, more likely you are to graduate. And students with mental health issues like depression or anxiety are 2 times more likely to withdraw or leave the institution. So we really want to increase the availability of services and preventative programs so we can reduce the risk and increase retention. With the current setup space we have now, it's difficult to add additional clinicians and interns. But if we were able to expand the reach, knowing that about 1,300 students are on this campus with a mental health issue not getting help, we would definitely see increase in retention and hopefully continue and keep those students until graduation. Same thing with the DAS office, 43% increase in students. Our most common accommodation is testing. The most common diagnosis we're seeing right now for accommodations is anxiety. Social anxiety has gone up too, with students coming out of COVID and quarantine and getting back into being in person. With testing being the number one accommodation, we've seen a 250% growth in the numbers of students, number of exams that they're booking through the for testing rooms. It's been a little challenging to accommodate all of that, so we're working to balance and working with faculty to make sure we can meet the needs of all students, but definitely some needs in that area when we think about infrastructure, and possibly separating CAPS and DAS, so we're not giving, so both areas have room to grow and meet the needs of having an increased student participation. Moving on to recreational services, we know that 68% of students report that campus recreation facilities influence the decision of what college or university they attend. And through our own data collection, students who use the rec versus students who aren't using the rec, we see an 87% continuation rate. And we're seeing a high continuation rate even with our students who are participating in club sports. We do have some facility limitations there, and one of the proposals that will be absorbed up through the Student Health and Wellness umbrella is to add field space or sports complex for the rec. So we can have presence of club sports on campus, get more students involved and engaged, and that would contribute to retention and engagement as well. So next steps, I've given you just some data of what we know so far. And based on that data, we can see that student health and well-being definitely plays a pivotal role in RRG and the overall student success throughout a student's time at Flint. We need to continue to develop student health and wellness resource options. The Okanagan Charter is one of the foundational documents that provide direction and framework that focuses on student health and well-being. This was has two calls for action: to embed health in all aspects of campus culture, and to lead health promotion action and collaboration locally and globally. The charter was developed in 2015 in British Columbia. There were 45 countries at that time that signed. So it was international before it was in the United States. In 2021, the University of Michigan did sign and pledge a commitment to take a holistic and sustainable approach to becoming a health promoting university. The Okanagan Charter really builds on the concept of interconnectedness between individuals and their environment. So when we think about something, just for an example, if we look at CAPS, so we know students are going there for mental health services, and CAPS is the clinicians will work with the students, but we're sending them right back out into an environment. And how is the environment within the campus community helping them to continue to sustain their mental health? And the Okanagan Charter looks at that on the campus level, the local level within the external community, and then globally. It's taking all the onus of health and well-being off of the health sector and putting it on at the community level and the campus level. One of the charges of the charter was campuses who adopted the charter had to develop their model of well-being. So I'm sure you've seen this many times on campus through Healthy and other programming, but that's how that came to be. So this is U of M's model of well-being that focuses on 8 dimensions of wellness. And with signing the charter, the next step is to develop a strategic plan for implementing health promotion on the campus and in the community. So another foundational document for this process is the American College Health Association developed a Healthy Campus Framework. And Mary Jo Desperez from Wolverine Wellness in Ann Arbor was on this committee to really evolve the framework so it did align with what the Okanagan Charter was asking schools to do. Even though our plan will look different than Ann Arbor's, it'll be guided by the same Healthy Campus Framework, which offers a roadmap for cultivating a campus culture where well-being is more than an initiative. It really becomes a foundation for student success and is embedded into the campus culture. So it is focused on providing tools and resources to help campuses progress towards becoming a health promoting university, and is comprised of 4 components: infrastructure, cornerstone, community, and culture. I did not list all the elements under each section. I just highlighted a few. When we're looking at infrastructure, we're really focused on making sure we have leadership support for student health and well-being, funding, that we're paying attention to the inequities and disparities on a systemic level. We're looking at facilities. Does the built environment support what we're wanting to do with student health and well-being? That's just going back to some of the things I shared related to CAP, STAS, and REC. Are we having an ongoing assessment of our students and even faculty and staff and where they are with health and well-being? Looking at the cornerstone, do we have the services in place? And it's not about having the specific services. You don't have to have all the services on campus. We have to have those partnerships to offer them. So right now we have the partnership with Ann Arbor to offer health services through University Health Services, mental health through CAPS. I have prevention and awareness in bold because we really did highlight that as an objective as part of this plan. To get out there and make sure we're having outreach programs so students who aren't presenting for services, we're still addressing those issues that we know are impacting their health and well-being and student success here at U of M Flint. Other cornerstone would be public health and safety, making sure our students have a sense of safety on campus, and we're taking initiatives there. And I know that's hard at finding that balance between what we are doing to make sure the campus is safe and our students' perception of it. So we really need to figure out a way to get those two aligned. And basic needs, of course. Community, the community component, we're recognizing that health and well-being is vital to student success, making it a priority, establishing partnerships, collaborating on campus, and then with community resources. Culturally, we're looking at just making sure we have structure, systems, policies in place to support student health and well-being, how students are perceiving our culture as it relates to health and well-being, which we'll continue to measure on the health assessment and the Healthy Mind Survey. I have inclusion and belonging as well bolded. That was another objective that really stood out. And it's getting highlighted a lot lately due to the focus on loneliness and depression. Connection is protection. We know that it's also prevention. We teach that a lot in our suicide prevention training, that just staying connected socially can really impact and increase positive mental health. We also have our Surgeon General on a campus tour right now. I don't know if anybody's seen, but talking about the healing effects of social connection and community as they address the epidemic of loneliness. Other issues under culture would be sustainability and the built and natural environment. Is the environment supporting student health and well-being related to recreation spaces, lactation rooms, green spaces, accessible facilities, safe walking paths, spaces for students to study, gather, and relaxation rooms, just are some examples. So in order to measure and build on this healthy campus framework, we have a healthy campus inventory available to us through the American College Health Association. And what it does is it allows us to take a complete inventory of where we are in the 4 components. And our goal is to achieve 80% or higher. That is what they are setting the benchmark for health promoting campus. As we continue to do the inventory, we will, once it's completed, we submit to the American College Health Association for review and feedback. So we'll get a score, and then we get specific recommendations where a committee then would identify specific strategies to help us maintain or continue to move forward to creating a health promoting campus. Along the way, we will continue to learn or use the National College Health Assessment and Healthy Minds survey to measure where we are in our progress. So when we go back to looking at, are we creating a culture of health and well-being? Are our students perceiving that? We'd like to get some feedback more than every 3 years with the inventory. So they want you to submit the inventory every 3 years, but we'd like to review and get an idea where we are. So our plan is to rotate the college health assessment, offer that in the even years, and then do the Healthy Mind study in the odd years. There also, the American College Health Association is currently developing additional assessment tools to help us measure well-being amongst our students. So as more students continue to navigate health and well-being challenges, our commitment to student health and well-being can influence their decision to enroll and to continue their academic journey to graduation here at Flint. Through becoming a health promoting university that supports the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of all students, we can help students overcome health-related challenges while creating a more positive and supportive learning environment. And this won't all just contribute to or impact student satisfaction and retention, but hopefully improve faculty and staff well-being and community engagement and partnerships. And I think I finished right on time. So that's all I have, but we can move to any questions.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it. So now we have a half hour for questions, comments, remarks, both in person and online. Do we have a second mic? So we have a question over here. Thank you.
So just a question about the data at the very beginning. One of the things I didn't hear was what was the student population that data was being pulled from? Undergrad, grad, numbers in regard to the size of the N in that regard as well, to give us some context.
Yeah, what I can tell you is that one of the things that, and I'll speak to the American College Health Association, so the National College Health Assessment, they determine whether or not it's a representative sample. And I do know that it was a representative sample. Lisa might have more information about the breakdown. I'm not too sure.
So it was all students. It was open to, we have a small enough campus that both surveys were sent to all students. We had 852 for National College Health Assessment, and it was about, I think it was 570 for around 570 for Healthy Mind survey. But it's all students, so it's grad and undergrad.
We have a question from Zoom from Sarah Rosen. Why do you think there is such a spike at DAS?
Lisa.
There's a couple of reasons. One, we know that treatments and medications are better. So education is more accessible to students now. So we're seeing more students take the opportunity to enroll. And we also just see an increase in mental health issues, students returning post-COVID, who have been in high school doing online school. We are seeing an increase in social anxiety as well.
And, while I don't know that we necessarily have data to support this, the better we are at our outreach activities and providing this information to students to let them know that, we do have this support infrastructure in place for them, I think that's going to generate some more business for us. So I think that may be contributing as well.
Do you predict that there are going to be differences in terms of the services that grad versus undergrad, international versus domestic, or online versus in-person students need?
I would like there to be. So right now, we do offer we're still offering online appointments, and we're hoping to add YouWill. It's a platform for telehealth counseling services that students could get after hours and on the weekends. Ann Arbor added it this year. We looked at it earlier this year. We didn't have enough data to show that our students were requesting that we weren't meeting the needs. And what I do like about it is it gives more resources for international students. So because they have access to clinicians who are more diverse and speak, they could be matched with somebody who maybe speaks their first language. So hopefully that's going to be added as part of the overarching plan.
And Yenner, I know that through conversations with Lisa that we have seen an increase in international students using CAPS. Certainly a large percentage of the population that uses CAPS are graduate students. So these are already being used, fairly widely among these populations. But I do think we have to think very strategically and intentionally about how are we going to continue to reach increases in these populations: online students, graduate students, international students. After the pandemic, we did see a slow increase in students preferring in-person services. So during the pandemic, obviously, we were offering online services and remote appointment opportunities, and we still continue to offer those, which we need to, but we're also seeing that there is an increased interest and need for these in-person services for students.
So as you look at YouWill, or you look at expanded services to online students, we have more and more of our graduate programs that have more and more students outside of the bounds of the state of Michigan. I know that there are some confines to what your staff can do from here if a student is out of state. Would pivoting to a you will allow for expanded service in regards to the type of services that and type of things that they can talk to these clinicians about?
Yeah, so we would and increase our range, but also there's good things going on with licensing boards. So there's Site Compact, there's a counseling compact right now where I think Michigan's still negotiating, but we can practice across state lines as long as other states are in that agreement. So we have it's growing for our ability to do it, but also you will definitely add to the mix.
And we also continue to provide additional resources that don't require people to be here in person. And we continue to pilot them, test them out, see what kind of traction that we're getting, and make some decisions about whether or not it's worth continuing that investment, or if we need to pivot and go in another direction to meet a need. But we continue to look at what's emerging out there in this space and then continue to bring it here to serve our students. Anything online?
Lisa, how do you see the recreational services fitting into this more in terms of the health and wellness, and also like the recreational sports leagues or whatever?
Well, physical, health and mental health are so interconnected right now. And just with the data suggesting the engagement in physical activity and club sports, uses of rec, really partnering. We've done some things this year already. I know CAPS partnered with rec to offer trauma-informed yoga, bringing, mixing the areas together, hopefully some enhancements to create student gathering spaces and interaction with rec in other ways to collaborate with not just CAPS, but other offices on campus. We have ambassadors this year out and about in different buildings, promoting information and sharing health and wellness related information, as well as information on rec services. So I really think, and then just with looking at getting club sports on campus, because a lot of our club sports are renting facilities throughout the community and sometimes at greater distances than we'd like to. I think having that presence, having other students be able to become part of that through spectating or through wanting to join will increase engagement. And I think usage and participation with the rec. So just having more of that presence and getting it outside or on campus, outside with some field space, I think would really just support and promote that connection, engagement, and overall well-being.
So I don't have a concept of size. So when you say we're renting spaces off campus, I don't know how much, or yeah.
I'm going to have Julia answer that.
So annually, we're probably spending, doing some quick math here in my head, upwards of $50,000 a year renting space off campus. Large majority of that, I will admit, is ice hockey, because ice hockey space is expensive anywhere you go. And I never expect us to build an ice rink here. So that means about $20,000 a year we're spending on renting field space. Baseball, softball, soccer. There are teams. We just had an ultimate frisbee team get started, right? There are club sport leagues that exist for sports we don't have now that we can easily have. There's rugby, lacrosse, you name it. There are collegiate club sport leagues for just about anything out there. And we can make it a lot easier for our students to create those teams and be successful here if there's space on campus.
Before, yeah, let me just jump in real quick before we get to that next point. So I think the original question was, how do club sports teams fit into the overall concept of wellness? And physical wellness is one of the 8 dimensions of wellness. That's our wellness model at the University of Michigan. So this is a very important piece that we need to consider, along with other aspects of wellness that don't get the attention that some of the other ones, like emotional wellness and mental wellness. So I think it's creating a balanced approach to how we can really create a full spectrum of wellness for our students on campus, but then also knowing that we do have a critical mass of students here that are looking for the more quote unquote traditional student population. So we have to be able to serve those students well. So these students are the students that are 18 to 22, 18 to 24. They're looking for on-campus activity. They're looking for opportunities to go to a rec center. They're looking for opportunities to participate in intramurals. If they want to continue to compete athletically on the college level, but not at the intercollegiate level, we're able to provide club sports for them. And we need to be able to provide them with that kind of experience if we continue to want to be able to serve those students. So I think that's why it's a critical component that we're able to provide these for this population of students, even though other students may not be engaging in this the same way.
So since we're on the topic, I'm just going to ask another question, because there was a proposal put forward to have fields. And so in conversations out in the community, I've learned that the county is looking at developing something. Does anybody know about that? Haven't heard anything. Okay, I'll find another way to pursue information.
What else? Thoughts?
So if these fields are on campus, I'm just curious about the usage they will get and whether we have the capacity to turn them into revenue generating fields, and is there going to be demand from the community? And of course, that's sort of related to what Donna was asking, like if there are going to be alternatives, we may not have the same.
So yeah, I'll share kind of on a higher level, and then these guys can get into the specifics, but there is a tremendous need for facilities in this area, and there's not a lot of them. So in order for us just to be able to run our programs, it takes a lot of work and effort and time to identify resources and identify facilities just for us to practice and play. So we know that there's an identified need. We know that there's a lack of these types of facilities in this area. And part of the plan would be that we would not only be able to use these fields for our rec sports teams, but we'd be able to use them for our intramural sports teams, which then could lend itself to additional intramural opportunities for students. And then it would be a way for us to engage with our community and have them come on campus. So to get them physically on campus, use the fields. In terms of revenue, yes, we would rent them out. How much will that generate? I think that's, remains to be seen. But we would certainly charge for it. But I think it would create a good campus community sort of partnership and engagement, but it would also provide more activity on this campus, which is really what we're looking for. More activity, more engagement, more energy, more excitement. I think it'll add to that. Will it solve the problem? No, but I think it'll contribute to creating the kind of experience we're looking for on this campus. All right, I probably spoke too long. Do you want to answer anything in addition to that? Good? Okay.
I have a follow-up question to that. When you're talking about fields, are you talking about outdoor fields or indoor fields?
This proposal was outdoor. Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Okay. As somebody who also manages a soccer team outside of my role here at the university, I don't have a shortage of fields I can go to as an outside client in the summer months. But where it becomes very difficult, and I actually already rent the rec center for this purpose for training our teams, is the indoor space during those winter months. And if we're going to look at a new large facility for sports
and for other types of activities, I really, really would urge us to look at something that is indoor that could be used as a multi-purpose type of a location. My other hat is I'm a robotics coach for the Davison High School. Our facilities here cannot support a robotics competition. They're held at Kettering University. We could have these types of events on our campus if we had the right types of facilities. So that's,
Yeah.
I would urge you to really think about all of those things before we commit to something that would only be used a few months out of the year and during the months that our students may not even be on campus.
Well, I appreciate the comments, and I think it's all very legit, and I think there's a need for all of that. And I think when it comes down to this transformation process, it's scope and scale. I think what it amounts to. We know what the cost for a multi-sport field complex would be. We know that we would want it to be turf. We know that we would want it to be lit. So this would allow us to have more usage. It would decrease the maintenance over time. The other thing is, with the campus master planning process, let's see what they come back with their evaluation of the rec, and let's see what they recommendations they have with that facility, and see if there's anything we could possibly do there. Beyond that, we could certainly consider it. Again, I think it depends on scale and scope and what we could support as part of this process.
Sorry, it's also a recruitment tool. As someone who played sports, so like I went to a lot of college camps, and so a lot of times athletes will choose schools based on their camp experience. And so I heavily remember schools like I would love to go here based on like a camp I had and just like the facility, whether it was winter or summer. And so it is also just like a way for context, people thinking about like how you engage the community to then want to come to U of M Flint. And so camps and facilities like this are a great start, especially for athletes, whether it's club sports or not. So
yeah, I mean, and that's a true consideration, for students going through this process. My son is a senior. My daughter is a sophomore in college. We just recently went through these processes. The most important thing, I shouldn't say the most important thing, but one of the important things for my son was the rec center. Going to spend a lot of time there. It's a central gathering place. Lisa and I were just talking earlier today about how the movement toward using rec centers, really transitioning them into health and wellness centers and using them as a central piece, literally centrally located on campus, that provide additional light to light up the campus at night and really draw attention. It's almost like a gathering spot for students. So there's a lot of opportunities, and I think there's a lot we can do. And I think we have to really prioritize and determine, what is at the top of that priority list, and then what can we pursue.
So one of the things that I was just looking at again, because I've been a little more concerned about it in talking to grad students, is the hours of the rec center. I mean, currently your hours run from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. during the week, except for on Fridays and Saturday 9 to 2 and closed Sunday. I definitely hear from grad students that, for our full-time grad students, they're in class by 8 a.m. They're in class many days until late in the evening. So getting to the rec center, even though they want to, in those timeframes, is very difficult. I've heard from some grad students that have said that the full-time grad students that are on campus, that they would prefer and would like to have either later hours or early hours to be able to utilize before they go and have to jump right into class. The fact that even for our undergrad students, it's a place where students go, but right now we have very limited hours on Saturday. We have no hours on Sunday, and on campus in general, it's a big concern in regards to, I have grad students that say, I want to get in the library on Sunday and it's closed. You can't get around campus because it's closed. So I think that those are all things we need to be thinking about in regards to accessibility and offering opportunities for full-time students whether they be undergrad or grad, but also looking at our graduate populations and looking at the things that they would use. I know that there are online students that have asked me the same thing. I wanted to come to campus, but the computer labs are closed and the library is closed, so I can't use the services. So, things that we just need to think about.
And yeah.
Thank you for that, Chris. I can't speak to the library or the computer labs, but I just want to let you know there is a survey open right now from REC to get feedback from students regarding the hours. So hopefully we'll get some more emails out to hopefully get them to respond and give us their feedback. It's been budget driven and staffing driven and coming back from COVID. So, but to get that feedback and to know what they want would be really helpful.
And certainly, agree with your comments and sentiments, but these aren't necessarily new ideas. I mean, these are things that we really struggle with all the time, is really trying to strike that balance. Our hours are driven by data that we have of when students are coming in, what the primary hours that they're coming in, and looking at staffing, the cost of staffing and keeping the facility open, looking at traffic patterns, certain times and days. I would love for us to be more of a 24/7 campus. I don't think that's who we are. Do we need to move more in that direction? Maybe, but I think there are a lot of factors and elements that will go into us making these kinds of decisions. So I think we have to think about it, but I also think that we have to be data informed, and we really have to capture truly what the needs of our students are.
I find myself wondering how an investment like this works out for a campus like ours. Very few students living on campus, primarily online or commuter. We know that after the freshman year, they're flipping almost completely online, whether it's because it's what we offer, it's what they want. So is this if you build it, they will come kind of idea? Like, are we kind of hoping for the best? Like, how do we think that's going to affect our dynamic? And I guess I'm wondering if you have experiences or know of other institutions like us and how something like this has helped to maybe turn the corner for them.
Well, I'll just share my experience. 30 plus years in higher ed. I've worked at a lot of institution types. I've worked at institutions just like this one. We're a commuter campus. That is part of our identity as a regional comprehensive university. We have residence halls, but we're not a residential campus. So that says something right there. And I think we have to look at who our student population is and who we're serving. Extremely diverse student population. If we would look at the different populations, very different needs. And I think one of our challenges is, how do we best meet the needs of each of these different student populations who are at very different points in their journey and experience and have a very different set of needs? So it's trying to be a master to all these things. And I think it makes it very, very difficult for our type of campus. It would be different if we were a campus that had predominantly 18 to 24-year-old students all living in the residence halls. Would make it very much easier to serve that population of students and serve them well. So I do think this is part of the conversations that we really need to be having as we move toward determining how do we best transform this campus in ways that serves these students, these populations of students, this community, and how do we position ourselves well into the future? I think that's part of what we have to talk about.
I know you mentioned something, Lisa, about the needs for space, for caps, for DAS, and maybe having those separate or whatever. Mike, and there's been a proposal to have a student services hub. And my question is, for students who use the CAPS or DAS services, is there ever a concern, like the students may be embarrassed that they need services to go to CAPS and so might not like it in the middle of a student hub where other people would see them? going in to get services or anything like that? Or is it fine to have it all together and very visible? I don't know the answer.
Well, for accreditation purposes, CAPS does typically, it's recommended that it is a separate and not part of a hub because they do want a private waiting room. That's the accreditation recommendation for college counseling centers. And we do know just Healthy Mind survey data saying that 50% of students still think there's a perceived stigma. So we do get a lot of students in junior, senior year who wish they would have known sooner about the services. And it's a spectrum because we have students who are very vocal about coming to CAPS and tell their friends and promote it. And word of mouth seems to be our biggest advertiser. But there's some concerns too, just about having both services together because not everybody who has a disability has a mental health issue, and what kind of message are we sending there? And just having disability services have its own space and presence as well. So I don't think either one of those departments would make sense to be in a hub just because of the sensitive, but nearby would be good. As long as, we had private waiting space too for students to have that privacy if they needed it or wanted it.
So we have a few minutes. Chelsea, anything online? 2-3 minutes for comments, remarks, thoughts, questions, anything. All right, folks, I think we're going to wrap it up. We really appreciate the engagement and the participation over these 5 information sessions, all your thoughts and input. So I want to thank you for joining in person. Thank you for joining online, and the process continues. Thanks.